So Trump touts a bill that could make voting harder for married women. Okay, so let's get into this. This is by Catherine Palmer, and I'm seeing other articles coming out, and I've heard some people talking about it off and on again. So married women are people who are thinking about marriage. You might want to look at this, because actually I think this is President Trump pictured here. It's called the SAVE Act that was passed by GOP. It was led House last year, so it's backed by on the House floor with a vote of expected February 11th, which I believe is already in effect actually, because we're past that now. So President Donald Trump is urging lawmakers to pass a voter ID bill. And so this voter ID bill that has been catching heat in the past for provisions that several voting rights groups warn could lead to voter disenfranchisement, including among married women. So it's called the Save Act America, or Save America Act, that is, Save America Act, which passed in the GOP-led House of Representatives. This was last year, but it has since stalled in the Senate and is again at the center of the discussion on Capitol Hill after it returned to the House floor. Lawmakers are expected to vote February 11th on the legislation, which would require people provide proof of citizenship to register to vote in federal elections and demand voters to show government-issued photo IDs that provides their citizenship to cast their ballots. Though that probably would be like, if it isn't a birth certificate, it's going to be like your state ID, or it could be a driver's license, or it has to be something that shows your citizenship or whatever with your address. So supporters call the efforts a security measure that say that they're trying to reinforce laws that will bar non-citizens from voting. However, the voting rights advocates, they say it's exceedingly rare for non-citizens to vote, and such anomalies aren't pervasive enough to influence election outcomes. So these groups, including the Brennan Center for Justice, say that the laws could make it more difficult for millions of Americans to cast a ballot, especially younger voters and voters of color as well. So millions of women whose married names aren't on their birth certificates or passports that could also face extra hurdles to register to vote and cast their ballots. So nearly 80% of the women in opposite sex marriages take their spouse's surname, according to 2023 study by the Pew Research. Most married men, 92%, keep their last name. So Republicans, lawmakers in more than 24 states introduced measures requiring people to provide citizenship over the past year, which would require people to provide documents such as birth certificate, passports when they register to vote, according to a nonpartisan voting right lab. So under current laws, many Americans need to present some form of an ID to register to vote. The act would require Americans show additional documents that prove citizenship, such as a passport or a birth certificate. So according to the Brennan Center for Justice, more than 21 million Americans lack ready access to those documents. Some people lose those documents. So it says roughly half of the Americans don't have passports, and millions lack access to paper copies of birth certificates, the group says. So another catch is that the birth certificates or passports may not be up to date if the person has changed their name as well. So most commonly that happens during marriage, and voting rights advocates say that this could cause problems and could arise if individual documents are not reflected those name changes. So proposed legislation landed in the public spotlight again recently after the president made controversial remarks during a podcast February the 3rd calling for federal government to get involved in overseeing elections. So this is just another hurdle that they're creating to make it harder for people to vote in these situations. So President-elect Donald Trump, at a conservative political radio show, Dan Bongino, He speaks during a UC or UFC, I say UC or UFC 295 event in Madison Square Garden. Okay, so it says, but Trump, it says he didn't mention the SAVE Act, okay, Save America Act, when asked about his podcast remarks during the Oval Office event, and has doubled down on his remarks about federal involvement in elections as his administration ramps up efforts to investigate 2020 contests. Okay, so which he had lost to former President Joe Biden. So he still complains about that even till this day. You've heard him say, "Oh, it was rigged. It was this. It was that." But I'm hearing different people say that this voting was rigged. So it says Trump has posted about the legislation on social media in recent days in advance of the vote, repeating his years-long unsustained claims that America elections. Just like before I even read this, he said it was rigged and asked all Republicans to support the act. So I think this might be an article because it was like a real short read. So it says this article has been updated to add new information. So contributing is Carissa Wadrick of USA Today. So Catherine Palmer is in politics, a reporter for the USA Today, and it says where you can reach this person. So there's comments regarding the article. But yeah, I've been hearing a lot of stuff about people now, the elections, they might be trying to do things to try to alter it so to make it a lot harder for people or more complicated for people to vote. So you have to show proof of citizenship, which may mean you need like your birth certificate or passport or some document, something like your ID showing with your current address and everything up to date, showing that you are a U.S. Citizen in order to vote. And then it could be harder for people who have changed their names. Now they have to show probably their marriage certificate when they change their name. You probably have to present those things, I would believe, that would show why you have the change of names. And then who knows what else they might come up with. But yeah, I was hearing it. They're going to try to make it harder for a lot of people. So what do you think? This sounds like nothing I haven't heard before. So it is what is happening.